This Guy's Garage. Like and subscribe.
Mr. Chair, I am pleased to be here today to discuss our audit report of the ArriveCAN application, which was tabled in the House of Commons. I wish to acknowledge that the lands on which we are gathered are part of the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. Our audit of the ArriveCAN application looked at how the Canada Border Services Agency, the Public Health Agency of Canada, and Public Services and Procurement Canada manage the procurement and development of the application, and whether they spent public funds in a way that delivered value for money. I will discuss our findings, but first, I have to say that I am deeply concerned by what this audit didn't find. We didn't find records to accurately show how much was spent on what, who did the work, or how and why contracting decisions were made. And that paper trail should have existed. Overall, this audit shows a glaring disregard for basic management and contracting practices throughout ArriveCAN's development and implementation. We found evidence that GC Strategies was involved in the development of requirements that were used when the agency later moved to a competitive process to award a $25 million contract for work on the ArriveCAN app. The requirements were very specific and narrow. This gave GC Strategies an advantage that other potential bidders did not have. We also found that the Canada Border Services Agency's overall management of contracts was very poor. Essential information was missing from awarded contracts, such as clear deliverables and the qualifications required of workers. When we looked at invoices approved by the agency, details about the work performed and who did the work were often missing. This greatly contributed to our conclusion that the best value for money was not achieved.
Auditor, thank you very much for being here today. Did Canadian taxpayers get value for money from Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's government on the $60 million ArriveCAN app?
So we concluded that the public service did not ensure that Canada received best value for money. I would tell you that we paid too much for this application.
You described it as the Trudeau government having, quote, glaring disregard for management practices, end quote, and poor record keeping, a lack of basic due diligence, and that you were, quote, unable to determine the precise cost of the ArriveCAN app, end quote. So $60 million is an estimate. Is that correct?
Yes, we estimated that it cost around $59.5 million. There could be amounts there that should not be linked to ArriveCAN, but there also could be amounts that are linked to ArriveCAN that were not flagged in the books and linked to that project.
So it's reasonable to say that it could be more than $60 million.
It's reasonable to say that we've put together the best estimate, but it took a lot of effort. We had to go through many journal entries all the way back down to task authorizations to see whether or not items were linked to ArriveCAN. Professional judgment was needed, yes.
Right, and just to quote the key facts from your report, it says, quote, this made it impossible to accurately attribute costs to projects, end quote, with respect to the poor record keeping. You've been investigating billions of dollars in government spending over your tenure as Auditor General. Would you say that the Trudeau government's ArriveCAN is the worst that you've seen?
So I looked at a lot of contracting that happened during the pandemic when the public service was asked to act quickly and serve the public. This would probably be the first example that I've seen where there is such a glaring disregard for some of the most basic and fundamental policies and rules and controls.
One of the reasons that our committees have been engaged in this file, and the CBSA has been doing an internal investigation is to ensure, and one of the reasons it was submitted to the RCMP initially was because of some of the concerns that were shared as well. Have you had a discussion with Ms. O'Gorman or Michelle Lafleur, who's in charge of the investigation and the integrity component of this?
So throughout the audit, I did have a few conversations with the president of Canada Border Services Agency, as well as my deputy auditor general. I have not talked with the investigator. The team has seen the preliminary facts, but I didn't want to compromise my impartiality by looking at something that was not yet complete. So I haven't had more fulsome conversations.
And this is the issue that we're concerned about, we want to make sure that people didn't do work and somehow got paid all this extra money for work not being done. Did that come across in your investigations?
So many times when we looked at invoices, some of the most basic support was missing, whether it be an indication on the invoice as to what IT project the work related to. There were several IT projects underway at the Canada Border Service Agency at the time. And when you don't have that information, it's hard to know when we're looking at it after the fact, what project it related to. And it's also hard for individuals who are trying to maintain accurate financial records to know where to charge that invoice. So really, I think our biggest finding is that there was lack of documentation that should have been there, that traditionally is there to support invoices and task authorizations or contracts.
In your report and in your discussion with CBSA, there's some discrepancy in terms of the overall cost of ArriveCAN, because you can't reconcile what has taken place here. There's about 16 million or so that they've identified as being other applications. Did you see value for money in those contracts?
So the agency raised concerns around about $12 million that was included in the $59 million because they felt at times of a general nature, or it wasn't clear that it related to ArriveCAN. And I think that's exactly our main finding, is that their records should be better to demonstrate that. When we looked more specifically at that $12 million, we felt that about half of it was clearly linked to the ArriveCAN application, and in fact half of it had been provided to another parliamentary committee previously as expenses linked to ArriveCAN. This just speaks to why it's important to document as you go and make sure that the work is clear, and that the evidence that you have to support that work took place is fulsome. Then there are no questions when we come in and look to audit or raise questions around value for money.
And thank you very much. Suivant, c'est la députée